Yeah, I was going to ask concerning, I mentioned intelligence gathering. Before some of these attacks are carried out, by now we have gone through this phase so much so that every Nigerian would expect that security operatives at least would get wind of some of these, attacks before they are carried out. Some of the pictures of, the people that are killed cannot even be shown on air. We can't even show them. It's so gory. And if all that is done right now, or that is seen to be done, is, condemnation without action, how then will the people have that faith that they are indeed secured?
Well, why not holding brief for the security forces for intelligence gathering? You might not exactly. I remember the IG, or the Deputy Inspector General of Police, saying, talking about how many of such attempts have been foiled. But it is the one that takes place that people get to capitalize on, because the primary responsibility of government is protection of the life and property. So once that happens, no matter what they have done before in the protection of lives and property, it takes prominence, which is natural, because every life of a Nigerian, a single life of every Nigerian, means a lot. So we cannot continue to wait and witness wasting of lives and begin to condemn without taking adequate measures to ensure that these things are brought to a halt. We need to further interrogate this issue of herdsmen, because if you look at it, before the attacks are made, there are no reported cases of clash between the herdsmen and the farmers. The attacks are well coordinated, planned, and executed without it. And the worst of it was that arrests are hardly made until recently. That after the attack in BENUE, that 6 people were arrested. And I was surprised that the police also rushed to charge these people to court. I am of the opinion that they should be debriefed to know their involvement. Is it beyond herdsmen and farmers' clash? What are their aims and objectives? We have been coexisting. There has been this normal relationship between the Fulani herdsmen, apart from where you see that their farms are destroyed. Measures are put in place to resolve the crisis. But a situation where these herdsmen go fully armed with sophisticated arms, killing people, unprovoked attack, it calls for worry, for real concern. And I believe government should take adequate measures. Besides, campaigns have started. Campaigns have started, and we are going to expect more of these attacks and crises. Look at what happened in Rivers. We are not attributing that one to herdsmen. That's a court-related issue. But you see, most of these attacks are based on these herdsmen or gunmen, because all of them are not herdsmen. So it gives cause for worry. We're expecting a lot of crises, a lot of challenges this year. That election is upcoming.
Mr. Jeffo, staying with you, the question Yomi asked earlier about intelligence gathering. We have organizations, agencies of government that are meant to gather intelligence so that these issues are nipped, as in stopped, even before they begin to come up. Is it that they're not getting enough cooperation, or are they overwhelmed?
Well, your question is very valid. But I also tell you that the intelligence services and the security forces are made up of Nigerians. And again, if you look at the various segments of our economy, there is shortage of funds, lack of funds to all the, in fact, in terms of infrastructure, we don't have sufficient funds to carry out it. So the security is not left out. There are certain things that should have ordinarily been done to assist the security forces to further gather intelligence that are not in place. So they work within the limit of what they have, and they cannot be magicians.
So
that's not to say too that they shouldn't improve on what they are doing now.
You know, your first statement said these organizations are made of Nigerians. and then you go on to talk about shortage of funds. One begins to wonder, is it that Nigerians are not able to do anything as far as there's not enough money? Is it about the money, or is it about the thinking, re-strategizing?
No, you're thinking, we are all worried because you cannot do anything without security. But come to think of infrastructural development, we talk of bad roads. Will people not complain about bad roads? But complaining will not be sufficient unless funds are made available to construct these roads, bring power, and all these things are capital based, and the funds are not really there to play about with.
Okay. Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, I was going to ask the question because Asede Henry on Twitter is saying Mr. President should make his stance known on this Fulani herdsmen killings. These are becoming one too many. Mr. President is not talking about this, which brings to question if he's aware of what's happening in Nigeria. So the question I was going to ask is, how do you rate government's response so far to the security challenges in the country?
Okay, let me just lay a premise for us to look at what you're saying. I think we need to first of all lay the premise that we need to interrogate this issue with unalloyed, unarmed truth, and also, naturally from where I'm coming from, redemptive love. We have to be fair to everybody. I wouldn't want to be focused on what Mr. President alone can do. For instance, I would say that the fact that the president himself is of Fulani extraction, for strategists who hate the country, would be an asset for them to exploit. And not only that, if we really are practicing the so-called American-style democratic republic in Nigeria, we would find out that we cannot just sit down and just talk about Mr. President, Mr. President. In fact, what I believe what we should be doing right now is that we should be talking about regional defense lines. I remember when we started out with the Boko Haram issue, like I pointed out to you, there's so many things we're sweeping under the carpet. Unarmed truth tells us that is this not the same headsmen who are applying for C of O's of military bases, or sorry, for us to grant them ranches across the country, which of course were going to be military bases. So if we look away from the intelligence, we are going to be in trouble. And secondly, look, this has to do with lives. For me, maybe you have never seen grieving families. Like you pointed out, the killings are so horrific, so gory, and so savage that no country that is thinking right would politicize an issue like this. So what am I talking about here? I did mention that these problems predate the existence of Nigeria. So what are the kind of responses we should be looking at right now? I believe that the cultural nations in Nigeria are going to have to find their act when it comes to this. Because whether we like it or not, the cultural nations have the bonding, have the cohesion, and have the ability to put together the will that we may not be able to generate as a nation. What am I saying now is I'm saying, let me look at the Southwest, for instance. The Southwest needs to go into a regional defense structure right now because it's practically the best way to handle this issue. Not only that, after the cultural nations, we're also going to need the forward-looking governors. Between you and I, why should we be talking about headsmen being a problem in this modern age? I want to tell you that in the days when we had leadership like that of Obafemi Awolowo, he would have called certain governors together and looked at the fact that what cattle headsmen provide is supposed to be protein, not so? He will have told you, let us look at other sources of protein, and within 6 to 9 months, you'll be able to see fisheries dotted all over the Federation. Not only that, we will be building synergy across with even religious authorities, with the mosques and with the churches, and asking everybody that, wait a minute, have you seen the savagery with which necks are being cut and people are being macheted to death? Now, if we are going to handle these things, what we need right now is to introduce the fact that we don't need any more nomadic supplies of beef. So we are going to have to ask, look, this is the strength of Africa. This is where we have something that the Western nations don't have. Western nations are built on the nuclear family structure. African nations were built on, the communal structure. It takes an entire community to bring up a child in Africa. And you know what the strength of that is? When something threatens our existence and we provoke our cultural nations, we will all sit down with the religious authorities and we say, you know what, if beef is going to be the end of what's going to cause so much death, sorrow, and pain in Nigeria, lay a plan, make sure fish is available, make sure so many alternatives are available, and build consensus. Voluntarily, we want to go off beef products for 6 months. Any sensible person looking at the strength of Africa knows that this is doable. If we say we don't need beef products for 6 months, while we establish ranches in Obudu and other parts of the country where cattle can grow in ranches in the hands of responsible people that will not create a security problem, why we would not modernize? Why the anachronism? Why are we talking about cattle rearers, nomadic cattle rearers in this modern age? It's even an embarrassment, and it shows that we stopped thinking a long time ago. Looking at the blood spill, looking at the bloodshed and the value to human worth, and seeing that there is some enemy somewhere thinking well and exploiting all our fault lines, we need to put up our thinking caps and let us organize these regional defense structures.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Festus Akinboye is also...
We need to go on break,
yes, we're going on that break. Just to tie in when we come back, is talking about a different vision and strategy. We'll come back to that after this break.